God just started kind of talking to me and working on my heart about signs and wonders, about the miraculous, about miracles. And the question he posed to me is like, is it still possible today? And of course, my answer right away was, well, of course, yes, God, you're the same yesterday, today, and forever. But then I just started thinking about, you know what, signs and wonders and the miraculous, and do I believe it? Do I hold on to it? And then I started thinking about our church and people in our church, and that there's situations that I know even in here that there needs to be a miraculous thing that takes place. There needs to be a miracle that happens. And then I started going, God, you have miracles for people at Word of Faith Church. This situation, whatever situation you're in, whatever place you need the miraculous, hey, hear the word of the Lord over this situation. Because it's not going to be by your might, it won't be by your power, it'll be by His Spirit that He accomplishes those things.
I was out helping a friend of mine cleaning out a tank. I was on a ladder. I was only about 4 steps up off the ground. And I leaned forward on the ladder on a round tank, and the bottom of the ladder kicked out, and I hit the concrete floor. I pretty much didn't move. We waited for the ambulance to get there. And once the ambulance got there, we realized that stuff was pretty serious. Headed straight for x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, and emergency surgery immediately. And it turned out that I had a compound fracture in my upper right arm. It ended up with 22 plates and 20 screws to hold it together. They were worried about infection. They thought that if that were to get infected with the break that I had, that it could turn into a possible amputation. As I was in the hospital, they realized that I couldn't walk, and they kept trying to get me to walk, and I couldn't. And finally, a PA said, there's something else wrong here. We need to do some more CAT scans. And it come back 2 nights after I was in the hospital that I had a fractured pelvis. When they released me from the hospital, I was basically a total invalid. My arm was in a splint, basically locked up, no movement at all. I was in a wheelchair, and I had to have help to get from the bed to the wheelchair. I got to the wheelchair. It was basically help 2 big guys to get me from the wheelchair into the car. I couldn't do anything at all. People helped me eat. They helped me get up to go to the bathroom. Everything was totally dependent on people helping me. Then my one son and my wife got me out of the car, and they pushed the wheelchair up into the church service, and I sat near the back on the aisle in my wheelchair. And of course, Pastor Cody spoke, and when he got all done, he said, anybody that needs prayer or needs a touch from God, come up here. And before I could even do anything, one of the people at the church grabbed that wheelchair, and I was on the move. Pastor Cody prayed, and they laid hands on me, anointed me with oil. That Sunday, after they had prayed for me, we went out, and of course they got me back in the car, and they got me back to the house. And I was sitting in my home, the chair, and had a blanket on. I wasn't cold or anything like that. And as I was sitting there, I just felt this chill, and it just started going down my arm. And it just went down my arm. And I told the wife, I'm like, I'm not cold, but I said, I had a chill go down my arm that was just crazy. And she said, well, okay, and she checked the furnace, and it wasn't cold, and I had a blanket on, I wasn't cold. 15, 20 minutes later, I told the wife, I said, I just had that chill go down my arm again. I said, it's just a chill. I said, it's not my body, I'm not cold. I said, but I just had this chill just run down my arm, and it just it just started up here, and it just went all the way down my arm and just right out my fingers. And over that afternoon, it probably happened 5, maybe 6 times. And every time I'd tell the wife, I'd be like, hey, I just had that chill go down my arm again. Well, then the Monday right after that was my first doctor's visit after the deal. And I was feeling pretty good, and I went in, and the nurse and everything, and they unwrapped my arm for the first time, and it had been like this for 2 weeks. And they unwrapped it and they looked, and I had 27 stitches up the back of my arm. And the nurse goes, wow, she said, that incision really, really looks good. And the doctor the gal come in, and she said, let's get those stitches taken out of there and we'll see. And so they pulled all the stitches, and she said, well, it all seems to look really good. She said, can you move your arm? I said, you mean like this? And she's like, wow. She said, you really have some good movement in your arm. She said, we're not going to put the splint back on. We're just going to give you a brace, and we'll set the parameters on the brace on how much you can move your arm. Well, then I just started moving my arm. Well, it just got more and more. And it got to where it's like, I could almost get it straight, and I could bend it, and it was just like, holy cow. And all of a sudden it got to where getting up out of the chair to go to the bathroom was easier. And now I could actually stand up by myself, and I could get on. I had a walker that rolled, and so I could get up and get in that, and I could go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden I didn't need somebody there 24/7. I mean, it was like I could go to the bathroom, I could go to the kitchen, and I could move. And I told the wife, I'm like, hey, I think I can walk. And she's like, no, they said you were going to be 4 to 6 months in that wheelchair. And I said, well, I don't care what they said, whatever they said, but I said, 4 to 6 months in the wheelchair is way, way overkill. I said, because I don't need this. And she's like, well, we don't want to hurt you. And I said, look, babe, I said, God's healed me here. And I said, this is a total miracle. I said, I don't care what anybody says, this is a total miracle. And so then we went back in the following 2 weeks after I had come to church, and everybody at the church, of course, could see that it was like, holy cow, what an amazing recovery. And I went back in then 2 weeks after, and the doctor says, wow, you really look good. And I said, yeah, I feel great, and she said, can you move your arm? I said, well, I can put it in my mouth. I can get it behind my head. I said, I can almost get it straight, not quite. She said, holy cow. She said, I have never seen anybody heal up as fast as you heal up. And she said, well, can you stand up? I said, yeah, I can stand up. And I stood up. And she said, well, can you walk? I said, yeah, I can walk. She said, let me walk around show me you can walk around my office. So I walked around her office. I had a little limp, but I walked. She's like, unbelievable. She said, this is just unbelievable. She said, it's amazing. I can't believe that we can walk. She said, from 4 months in a wheelchair to 4 weeks. And I said, absolutely, total miracle of God. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't even get out of the chair. Now I'm walking around. I just want to let people know that, it doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter what doctors say. It doesn't matter what anything says. God is our major, major, major physician. And there's nothing that God can't fix. And if you will let yourself be moved by God and let the people around you help you to be moved by God, there's no limits to what can be done.